My parents are currently facing felony charges for aggravated domestic assault and medical neglect, and the tight-knit community that once praised them as saintly, selfless caregivers now crosses the street to avoid making eye contact with them. My older sister, who spent her entire life using her chronic illness as a weapon to enslave me, is now living in a state-run assisted care facility because she finally alienated and drove away the only person willing to keep her alive. They lost their golden child's comfortable setup, their freedom, and their carefully curated public image all in a single evening. And it all happened because they couldn't stand the sight of me holding a single slice of birthday cake. To understand how a family built on the illusion of unconditional love ended with police tape and permanent restraining orders, we have to go back to the very reason I was brought into this world. I was not born out of love. I was born to be a medical supply cabinet. My sister, Tina, was diagnosed with a rare, severe congenital immune disorder when she was very young. She desperately needed a bone marrow transplant to survive, and after both of my parents proved to be incompatible donors, they made a calculated medical decision. They conceived me. Until I was 6 years old, I was treated like an inconvenient afterthought, passed around between distant relatives and babysitters. The only time my parents ever appeared in my life was when Tina had a medical flare-up. They would drag me, panicked and crying, to the sterile halls of the hospital. My entire childhood soundtrack consisted of my own terrified screams, the sharp sting of thick needles plunging into my flesh, and my parents' harsh commands to hold still because my sister needed me. For a brief, fleeting window after the successful transplant, things actually changed. Tina's condition stabilized, and my parents, celebrating her recovery, finally remembered the little girl they had stashed away. They came for me on a snowy afternoon. They saw my coat that was 2 sizes too small and my hands covered in chilblains, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine guilt in my mother's eyes. They took me to an amusement park, bought me a new backpack, and got me a soft plush doll that I instantly fell in love with. That night, I fell asleep clutching the doll, feeling my mother gently stroke my hair. She called me her sweet baby. It was the first time I ever felt like I had a real family. The next morning, that illusion shattered forever. We went to the hospital to visit Tina. When she saw our parents holding my hand, her face twisted in absolute fury. She burst into hysterical tears, screaming that she was just a burden now. She wailed that because they had a healthy daughter, they wouldn't want her anymore. She demanded they let her die. My mother rushed to her bedside, pulling her into a fierce embrace, but Tina wouldn't stop sobbing. That was the exact moment my mother made her choice. She held Tina's fragile face in her hands and, looking right at me, said, "You are the only daughter I have ever had. She is just a tool, born for your sake." I was too young to fully comprehend the absolute cruelty of those words, but I understood the shift in the air. From that day on, I was stripped of my childhood. My mother stopped calling me sweetheart. She never bought me another toy. I wasn't allowed to call her mom in public. As I grew older, Tina's staggering medical bills became a crushing weight on the household, and I was expected to bear the brunt of it. They pulled me out of regular extracurriculars and forced me to study nursing and physical therapy so I could be a more efficient, unpaid caretaker for her. "You should be grateful to Tina," they would repeat endlessly. "She is the reason you exist." The breaking point arrived on my 18th birthday. August 19th. I had spent the entire day running errands for the house and completing my coursework. I was physically and emotionally exhausted. As I was walking home, I passed a small bakery. The warm, sweet scent of vanilla pulled me in. I realized no one was going to celebrate my birthday. No one was going to buy me a gift. So, using a few dollars I had secretly saved, I bought myself a single slice of strawberry cake in a small cardboard box. I walked through the front door of our house just as Tina was having one of her episodes. The living room was in chaos. In the agonizingly slow minutes it took for the ambulance to arrive, my mother spotted the small bakery box in my hand. All her fear and panic over Tina instantly transformed into blind rage directed at me. She lunged across the room, and a sharp sting exploded across my cheek. Her palm connected with my face so hard it made my ears ring. "Your sister is dying," she screamed, spit flying from her lips. "And you have the nerve to walk in here thinking about cake?" You cold-hearted monster. Before I could even process the slap, my father slammed into me from the side. He kicked the back of my knees, sending me crashing hard onto the hardwood floor. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice a low, terrifying growl. If it wasn't for Tina's illness, we never would have had you. The cake box slipped from my hands, hit the wall, and burst open. Vanilla sponge and pink buttercream smeared across the baseboards and onto my t-shirt. I stared down at the ruined mess, my head spinning. It felt like an eternity before I could find my voice. Then you can just pretend I'm dead, I whispered. The twisted fury on my parents' faces froze, replaced by pure disbelief. What did you just say? My father demanded. I remained a pathetic heap on the floor, my worn-out t-shirt smeared with frosting. But a strange, terrifying calm began to settle over me. I raised my head, my voice surprisingly steady. You can just pretend I'm dead. My mother realized she had pushed too far, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. Her voice dripped with venom. You know perfectly well your sister can't eat cake because of her condition. You bought it just to spite her. I see right through you. She snatched the crushed box from the floor and hurled it into the trash. Then, she turned back to Tina, her voice instantly melting into a sickeningly gentle sympathy. Don't worry, my sweetness. In this house, no one will ever make you feel bad. The shouting had drawn the attention of our neighbors. A few of them had stepped onto their porches, their faces peering through our open doorway. My mother, a master manipulator, immediately put on a mask of weary, long-suffering apology for their benefit. Oh, please forgive the noise, she called out to them, sighing heavily. Leah is just being a bit difficult. Her sister is having a severe medical attack, and Leah started throwing a tantrum because we wouldn't let her eat her cake right now. Her father and I are just trying to teach her some discipline. She has to learn that she'll be taking care of Tina for the rest of her life. She can't be this selfish. She effortlessly painted me as the spoiled, gluttonous villain, directing the neighbors' chorus of sympathetic clucks and disapproving glares my way. I slowly pushed myself up onto my hands and knees. My gaze swept over the dining table, which was laden with an elaborate, untouched spread of food. It was all of Tina's favorite dishes. Her favorite soup, her favorite roasted vegetables. They had her exact dietary preferences memorized down to the seasoning. A tear threatened to fall, but I blinked it back hard. Mom, I said, my voice barely audible over Tina's dramatic coughing. Do you even remember when my birthday is? My mother stopped short. A flicker of genuine confusion crossed her face. She didn't know. In that single, silent moment, the absolute reality of my existence finalized itself in my mind. It's August 19th, I said, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Today is my 18th birthday. What am I to you, really? For a second, I saw a flash of panic in my mother's eyes. She opened her mouth to speak, but Tina immediately intervened. Tina's eyes were red-rimmed, and she leaned weakly against the sofa cushions. Is this my fault? Tina asked, her voice thick with exaggerated, theatrical pity. Is this useless body of mine ruining my little sister's birthday? I'm so sorry, Leah. Please don't be mad at Mom and Dad. It's all my fault. You can hit me, yell at me, whatever you want. With a dramatic flourish, Tina struggled to get up, pretending as if she were about to kneel before me on the floor. I instinctually reached out to steady her so she wouldn't fall, but my father misinterpreted the movement. A violent force slammed into me. My father tackled me backward. His eyes blazed with a manic protectiveness. She is fighting for her life, and you are throwing a fit over a stupid piece of cake to make her feel guilty. He shoved me hard. I flew backward, and the side of my head smashed violently into the sharp, wooden corner of the dining table. A blinding flash of white light erupted behind my eyes. Warm blood immediately began to trickle down the side of my face, matting into my hair. Through the intense ringing in my ears, I heard Tina's tearful voice. Oh, Leah, I envy you so much. You have a healthy body. You can celebrate your birthday like a normal person. She let out a heart-wrenching sob. Unlike me. I'm so sick I can't even have a single bite of cake. Her performative tears were all it took to completely ignite my father's rage. Apologize to Tina right now, he commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. When I stayed silent, paralyzed by the pain in my head, his anger boiled over. He grabbed a fistful of my hair and dragged me across the floor. The searing pain ripped a scream from my throat, which only seemed to enrage him further. We had you for your sister's sake, he snarled, jerking my head back. If you can't handle a little pain, how are you going to take care of her? He forced me to my knees in front of the sofa, then slammed my face down against the hardwood. Once. Twice. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. Only then did Tina speak, her voice slow and dripping with a sickening sweetness. It's okay, little sister. I forgive you. Mom and Dad work so hard to keep this family afloat. You need to be more understanding and stop making them so upset. The paramedics finally rushed through the door. They immediately surrounded Tina, loading her onto a stretcher. The neighbors whispered among themselves about how brave and forgiving Tina was, and how lucky my parents were to have such a wonderful, resilient daughter. Not a single person offered a hand to the bleeding, broken 18-year-old girl curled in the corner of the room. My heart finally and completely turned to stone. The desperate, pathetic child inside me who just wanted her mother's love died on that living room floor. I staggered to my feet, my vision blurring, desperate to escape the house. I had just reached the front door when my father's icy voice cut through the air behind me. You take one step out that door, and you are no longer a part of this family. You will have nothing to do with us ever again. Decades of repressed emotion, physical trauma, and sheer exhaustion crashed over me like a tidal wave. A crushing weight settled onto my chest. My breath came in short, jagged gasps. My legs gave out entirely, and I collapsed onto the front porch, my body convulsing as my nervous system essentially shut down from the extreme stress and head trauma. Mom, I gasped, my eyes finding her face as she walked out behind the paramedics. I thought, even if she didn't love me, she wouldn't just stand there and watch me die on the concrete. But she just looked down at me with pure, unfiltered indifference. She even held up a hand to stop a concerned neighbor who had taken a step toward me. Ignore her, my mother said decisively, her voice cold as steel. She's always been a drama queen, pulling stunts like this for attention. She tried the same trick 10 years ago. Do you really think I'm going to fall for it again? She turned her back on me and climbed into the back of the ambulance with Tina. The doors shut, and they drove away. I lay there on the concrete, drifting in and out of consciousness. Thankfully, the neighbor who my mother had warned off realized the pool of blood forming under my head wasn't a theatrical stunt. He called a second ambulance. When I finally woke up, I was in a sterile hospital bed. An 4 was taped to the back of my hand. A doctor was standing beside my bed, looking at my chart with a deeply troubled expression. My dear girl, he said softly. Who did this to you? I had 3 fractured ribs, a severe concussion, and required 8 stitches along my hairline. Before I could answer him, my cell phone, which the paramedics had placed on the bedside table, began to buzz. It was my mother. I reached over and answered it on speakerphone, letting the doctor hear. Where the hell are you? My mother's voice shrieked through the tiny speaker. It's past dinner time. Don't you know your sister can't go hungry when she's this weak? She didn't pause for a breath. Tina wants your sweet and sour ribs. Get them made and bring them to the west wing of the hospital immediately. Not a single question about where I was. Not a single inquiry about whether I was alive or dead. If that neighbor hadn't ignored her and called the ambulance, I would have bled out on their welcome mat. The life I owed them had been paid in full. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I looked up at the doctor, who was staring at the phone in absolute horror, and I finally spoke. I'm in room 412, I said into the phone, my voice completely flat. But I won't be bringing you anything. I am never cooking for you, and I am never taking care of Tina again. I hung up the phone and turned to the doctor. My father did this to me, I told him clearly. And I want to press charges. The doctor immediately brought in a hospital social worker and 2 police officers. Because I was legally an adult as of that very morning, the process was swift. I gave them a detailed, recorded statement of the assault, the years of medical coercion, and the financial abuse. The police officers visited the neighbor who had called the ambulance, and he provided a sworn statement confirming he witnessed my father dragging me by my hair and my mother denying me medical attention. 2 hours later, the door to my hospital room swung open. My parents and Tina, who was sitting in a wheelchair looking perfectly fine, barged in. My mother's eyes went wide for a fraction of a second when she saw the heavy bandages wrapped around my ribs and head, but her pride immediately took over. "You ungrateful little brat," my father started, stepping toward my bed. "We tell you to cook dinner, and you check yourself into a hospital just to avoid your responsibilities?" They were so consumed by their own arrogance that they didn't even notice the 2 uniformed police officers stepping out from the shadows near the bathroom door until it was too late. "Marcus and Elaine Thorne," the taller officer asked, stepping between my father and my bed. My father froze. "Yes? Who are you?" "You're both under arrest for aggravated domestic assault and reckless endangerment," the officer said, pulling his handcuffs from his belt. The absolute panic that washed over my parents' faces was something I will savor for the rest of my life. My mother began to scream, demanding to know what was going on, claiming I was a liar and a psychiatric patient. My father tried to physically shove the officer to get to me, which immediately resulted in him being tackled to the linoleum floor and aggressively cuffed. Tina sat in her wheelchair, her mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. She looked at me, waiting for me to back down, waiting for me to apologize and fix it like I always did. I just stared back at her, completely unblinking. My parents were dragged out of the hospital in handcuffs, screaming my name. Because my father assaulted a police officer during the arrest, his bail was set impossibly high. With both of them in county jail and me refusing to sign any release forms or assume any guardianship, Tina was left entirely alone. The hospital social worker evaluated her case and, finding no capable family members willing to accommodate her complex medical needs, transferred her to a state-run, long-term care facility. There were no more customized sweet and sour ribs. There was no more dedicated sister to abuse. There was just sterile institutional food and nurses who didn't care about her manipulative tears. As soon as I was discharged, I packed a single bag from the house, took my nursing certifications, and moved 3 states away. I blocked their numbers, changed my name, and finally started living a life that belonged exclusively to me. They spent 18 years telling me I was born just to keep her alive, but they forgot one crucial detail: a tool can only be used for so long before it finally breaks its master.